We are back. The Omniverse Comics Guide. Dave Molyneux, how are you, good sir?
Yes, all right, thank you, Eric Anthonize. How art thou's?
I'm good. We're having very moody weather today. It started off mild, then we got a snowstorm on the drive home, and now it's ready to barbecue. All in the matter of like 4 hours.
What?
Yeah, Toronto. Very moody.
Wow.
That transition into spring could be interesting. But how about you? How are you doing over there on the other side of the pond?
Wet England.
Wet. Did you wet yourself?
Yes, I wet myself just now.
Boy.
Just thinking about coming on and doing this. Got a bit nervous.
Talking about Johnny Five like I did last week.
So funny.
You called me out on it. That was perfect.
And
Good
then
timing.
shared that moment.
Yes, you did. I gotta really watch myself now because anything I say will be on the internet forever.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks to my pal Dave.
Hi.
So this week's top 5.
Or 10.
Dave, it was your top 10. You're right. This week's top 10. Dave, you had the idea for it. Why don't you tell us what we're going to be doing this day or this episode?
I think I poorly phrased it when I suggested it. It's like, what was it? The 10 comic. Well, if we each pick the 5 comics that completely change your perspective on what comics can do, and you went like, oh, what? Like 10 life-changing comics? Like, yeah.
I don't think I think it was I think you said like, what are the 10 most influential comics in your life? You said something big, and I'm like, do you want this personal, or is this what we think were game changers in the business? Like, I wasn't exactly sure how you were seeing it, but so it was like,
it's very personal.
Okay, yeah, and I was like, man, we're gonna go there quick in the history of the show. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's get in.
Yeah, let's
show some manly honesty.
That's right. Let's get into it.
Well, manly.
So I always ask you this question, and you always make me feel like a dunce. That's why I keep the cap on. No, I'm kidding. It was because it's your. I remember when I said, "How did you pick your top 5 guilty pleasures?" And you're like, "I picked guilty pleasures." So this time I was gonna say, "How did you pick? Like, did it come from emotional places? Did it come from like a creative, like things that on a creative level that I just felt like, wow, that changes how I look at things? Like, how did you make the list for yourself today?"
I'm going to say something to you that's going to be really familiar. Okay. So I'm the order that I'm doing them in, right? It's not alphabetical. It's autobiographical. Whoa.
Wow, I like that. Hey, we threw the name around High Fidelity for our website once upon a time. So nice callback. That was good. Ooh, it's autobiographical. I'm excited. So
how about you?
Please, I picked a little bit of a mix. I didn't do anything in an order as clever as yours. I wish I did, but I did something that was both the things that influenced me, is like it made me kind of see or accept things differently than I had, maybe like a feeling I was struggling with inside. I read something in a comic and I'm like, wow, that's going to change how
comics is therapy.
Yeah, it was comics as therapy. It was comics as the medium itself, or something connected to a character, or something that I think, so some of it was personal, and then some of it was history of me as a kid.
Yeah,
like the experience with comic books.
Okay,
that
that's cool.
Yeah. So I have perhaps one alternate in the last minute, in the final hour before we pressed record. I did have an alternate, so I'm gonna decide if I throw it in the mix or if I save it at the end.
It's up to you. You can do it whenever you like. I was going to say before we actually completely go in, but I'm happy for. Whose turn is it? We always do this. Whose turn is it?
Your turn. Your turn. You came up with the idea. I want to hear your autobiography.
Oh my god!
Like, I don't even want to hear mine.
Get out! I will say that there've been a few things we've mentioned lately that we've both said like have been really big things or really impactful, but I'm trying not to refer to those things we've talked about in depth. So like Peter David's Hulk should be in here. It should be in here, and probably a number of times. It could be like all 5 because of different points. And that was a decade, and the way it married up with what was going on in my actual life is quite kind of interesting.
Right.
Well, for me, but it's not here. So let's go straight to number one. So number one, this actually came out in the late 90s. I did make a little note as to when it was coming. It started in 1995. It's a Vertigo series. I can barely lift it. But it's Preacher.
I just finished that series.
So good. What, did you like it? Did you like the ending? Is that a no?
You know what? I have to reread the ending again because I feel like I really missed the mind-blowing moment that everyone speaks about. I thought it was good. I did like it, but I'm like, I missed. There's people always say, when you get to the end. So I saw that, and like the ending was really clever. I did like how the use of characters and redirecting. Like, here, this is how we can work our way around it. That was cool. But I feel that it didn't blow my mind. I think, and I had a conversation with my friend today about, not this particularly, but when expectations can become so high, that it misses you, because it's been like, that's the best movie all time. You're like, I'm going in and I'm waiting to be blown away, and then you miss what was actually special because your expectations have been skewed by everyone else's experience. And I think that happened with me in Preacher.
It's more than likely, and it's one of those things where like the longer it is till you leave it, you're not necessarily going to hear anything bad. There'll be people that go, it's a bit much at times or whatever, and they don't necessarily like it. That's fine, they're wrong. But the thing with it, apart from just being like it is quite shocking at times, but it feels like it's earned. So it's not just like, here's a shock moment. There's character woven into this story. And that was one of the things with it. So like for me, when I started reading it, it was when the trades came out. I think I started around about 98, 99 picking up the books, or maybe even to the early 2000s. So it's about 5 books in, and I thought, I have to pick this up. Like, people are really banging on about this, and I want to know what it's about. But I'd mostly stuck to Marvel, or if I'd veered away from Marvel, I was reading the odd bit of DC. Like, I'd read Dark Knight Returns, Watchmen, the things you'd expect people to have read. And neither of those particularly blew me away. They aren't the life-changing things.
Do you think it's for the same reason?
Probably.
Because of
too much hype.
Yeah.
Too much hype.
When I started listening to podcasts, this is a slight tangent, but in the vein of Dark Knight, I would listen to the Kevin Smith Batman.
Fat Man on Batman?
Batman on Batman. And he would talk about the Dark Knight and sometimes break down into tears. Like, it meant so much to him.
Wow.
He would talk about it with such poetry, and like, it makes you want to pick up the book and like, what are you seeing? Like, and it's there, right? You know, there's people that do
a lot of people love it.
A lot of people love it, and a lot of times it's like, I don't find that comedian funny, but 20,000 people are laughing. So,
that's the thing. That's like when there's reviews. So obviously I do reviews on Instagram, and the reviews are now, of course, being added to the website, omniversecomics.guide. Plug.
Plug away.
Plug in. This is the place to plug. It's our place. So there are reviews, but whenever I think I've mentioned this before, whenever I give a book 5 stars, it's awful. I hate it, really, in a way, because there's too much expectation on it, and people see things as is. Oh, yes. This is good. It's like, well, no, yes. This is like, for me, I'm saying it's like, it really hit me. It may not hit you the same way. So,
right.
But with Preacher really did hit in a certain way that, like, where I hadn't read, God, this is a beautiful book, by the way. Like, it's this leather, it's like a faux leather bound. It looks like a Bible. So, blasphemy.
Right.
Blasphemy you. So, that's Eddie Izzard reference there. But yeah, it's the character work. There's one bit quite early on where I don't want to spoil too much, but there's a sniper is hired to keep one character under control, and basically there's about 6 pages or maybe even 8 pages dedicated to finding out why he's called Jimmy the Eunuch. I think it's Jimmy the Eunuch. I might be confusing him with Jimmy the Penguin from an Eddie Izzard sketch, but or Bobby the Eunuch.
That's from the first. What issue is that in?
Oh God, it's in like the 20-somethings of it.
Okay. I it sounded familiar, but I had just finished the second half of the omnibus. I'm like, oh no, I already forgot who Jimmy the Eunuch is. But it was over a year ago.
He's a minor character. Well, that's the thing. There's like 6 to 8 pages of him explaining what happened to him in his life and how he earned his name. and then he's basically just a sniper from then on. But they've given him all this character. Garth Ennis fed so much character into these characters that they feel like real people. And even though the scenarios they're in are so utterly insane, you're so involved. Well, I just felt so involved in their journey, in their lives, in their journey. God, that sounds so goddamn cheesy. But basically, it's like it's the ridiculousness of the situation. If you don't know what Preacher is, it's about a preacher who's losing his faith, who is suddenly kind of not possessed as such, but the offspring of an angel and devil enters him, and it gives him the ability to tell people what to do, and they will do it. But it's a power that he doesn't use repeatedly. He uses it quite sparingly, but while he's basically being hunted then by the Saint of Killers, who's basically the angel of death, who's a cowboy. But he has his ex-girlfriend in tow, and he makes a new friend called Cassidy, who it turns out is kind of a little on the supernatural side. To
say the least.
And it's a road movie, and it was inspired by Wild at Heart, of all things. Apparently it's inspired by Wild at Heart and Roadrunner cartoons.
I see that.
And westerns, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's quite the art piece in a lot of ways. Like, I know people don't like when we get overly pretentious with our hobbies or our music or whatever the case may be, but there are times where even something with the shock value that Preacher has, and it goes heavy.
Oh yeah.
There is a lot to explore in these characters. There's a lot of topics that get discussed in very, very like honest and shocking ways.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not to be taken seriously. It's meant to, like, hey, this is a story, right?
Well, one of the characters is called Arseface, so it's not It's not all doom and gloom.
No, there's a lot of comedy.
But it's funny.
There's a lot of comedy. And like you said, it's that road trip element. So getting out of these ridiculous situations are often zany. It's like, oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
Oh no. Like it's comedic in its horror.
Yeah.
Like it's horrific, but you're like, oh my gosh, he's getting what he deserves.
Well, that's just it. The ending, the thing that Garth Ennis said before it came out, all he said was everybody gets what they deserve. And we talked before, I think, once about the Hollywood thing. Like, Hollywood justice is always death, which is why pretty much every supervillain dies in the comic films. You're going like, well, they come back in the I know they come back from the dead often in mainstream comics, but this, they tend to kill them in films. Dr. Octopus dies at the end of Spider-Man 2. Spoilers. It's been out a while. Keep up. But yeah, I mean, with this as well, because it's not a superhero comic, it feels like this consequence. When people are killed, they're not coming back, and it was one of those things. Well, that's part of why you're so invested in these characters. It's like when people are watching Game of Thrones and they're going, they are killing people left, right, and center. Is my favorite character going to be okay? And because you care about them, you've invested in these characters. I was watching Game of Thrones, just going, you better not kill Tyrion. The whole way through. How don't you dare? Don't you dare? All the way through. That's not any kind of spoiler there. I'm not revealing whether anything does happen or not. But for me, Preacher
it's the feeling you had during the journey, Dave.
During the journey. Yes.
If anyone's wondering why my face is going dark to light, it's the sun outside right now. So it's not a technical difficulty on your TV. Just bear with me. This is natural lighting.
And now to Eric for the weather.
I said I was going to be your weatherman last week.
You did.
Right? So I said, that was a bad impression of a weatherman. You better get with it. So there you go. It's 7 degrees outside. Mix of sun and clouds. Enjoy your drive home.
I think I prefer the style of the other side of the Atlantic weather people.
How do they
to
do
ours. Ours just kind of go, there'll be a slight northerly gust. So you might want to just make sure your deck chairs are put away nicely. Come on, it's so British. But anyway, yeah, I mean, without going to massive amounts of depth, I don't want to spoil it, but Preacher it's 3 of these volumes, but if you don't want to get absolutes, and this to me was worthy of an absolute edition. So absolutes are, as we showed the other week, they're massively oversized, they're very, very big, very chunky, but they're normally for if you if you love something so much, and I do with Preacher, but it's available in like I think 6 trade paperbacks as well. I think that originally it was 9 trade paperbacks, and they've kind of collected them as 6. So you have to be a little bit careful you're not buying an old edition. So just there's like the Preacher New Edition, Volume 1 to 6. I think something like that.
Or you can get 2 omnibus.
2 omnibus, yeah.
Which is how I read it.
Yeah.
And it comes with all of the bonus miniseries and the extra covers and background stuff. Like I'm sure the Absolute has all of that as well. It's worth it. If it's worth it, but like I said, I think on the last episode or last Speakeasy, because our deal was like you got to read it before our next Speakeasy, which I did, which I was happy about. But it's not for everybody.
It's not for everyone. Someone said they certainly use the N word quite a lot. They do. I can't imagine this bit, like where it's set. I think he was trying to make it feel authentic, especially for the time it was in. So I mean, like he was really inspired by Quentin Tarantino as well, and that was riddled with the same kind of language. It doesn't hold back, and the villain. All I will say, without ruining that for anyone, is the villain repeatedly gets what he deserves, and it's brilliant.
It's so good.
It's so good.
It's so good.
That in itself, with one of the best lines I've ever read in comics, and I can't say it on here because it would spoil it so much. But maybe after the show, we'll share that.
Fair enough. Yeah, good pick. I can see why it was on the list. I thought about it. I said, but I think Dave might pick that. So leave that for him. Imagine if I took it. I'll go first.
I'd cry.
I just finished reading Preacher.
It was okay. Not sure about the ending. That's not how you talk. Okay, George. Why did that happen?
I don't know.
Hey, Dave, tell us what your number 1 pick is.
That's what we should do a whole episode like that. I'll be Sam, you be Ralph.
Done.
Like, how's it going, Ralph?
Okay, George.
Okay. I'm gonna go to the first one. Like, I'm gonna try to make it autobiographical with my first pick. So this isn't a comic book that is like groundbreaking in its writing or in its, it did change everything, but more because of the event of it. My very, very simple answer is this book.
Second time I've seen a cover of one of those today.
Is it? When was the first?
Not to veer off too heavily. It turns out, so Reed Reads gets DC Ultra, and they send you a book as well.
Cool.
So Infinite Ultra, which is the top tier.
Yeah.
So you get access to all the trade paperbacks, which we were talking about the other week. I didn't know they also send you a trade paperback. I don't know how often.
Very cool.
So, yeah.
Shout out Reed Reads. What's up, buddy? That's very cool. So in relation to so he received this book.
Yes.
That's what they sent him. So this is the actual copy that I bought when I was a kid.
So is that the 90s one? Did they release it in the 90s?
This is, from 92 or 93. I was staying with my grandparents up in a small town, not like about an hour and a half from where we live in the city. Little mall, had a bookstore in it. I loved going to bookstores for forever. And they had a little comic book section, and this was there, and I had never seen anything like this in my life. I was 8 years old. This was a thick version of the death of Superman. Like, what could this be? And I looked at the back. My parents had given me a small little allowance to buy something for myself if I happened to go somewhere, and I had just enough to buy this book, which was the entire story of the death of Superman, not just the final issue, which I had seen a lot of. Right?
Yeah.
You'd seen pictures of it everywhere.
Yeah, it was pretty famous, wasn't it? It was in it was in the news.
It was in the news. I remember seeing it on the news. My parents were watching the news, and Superman's being carried in the air. Superman has died. I'm like, what? Huh? Is it real? Like they're reporting it like this is a real thing. But obviously, it was a publicity thing. DC was making, it was historic because this was a character from the World War that is basically the one you can't kill, and they're gonna do it. And I guess it was a slow news day or what, but it was. Anyways, it had all the issues on the back. I'm gonna put the little picture there. 7 comics in one thing. Wow, what a way to read.
The Justice League issues as well.
There's a Justice League issue. Yeah, they have the story really complete, right?
Yeah.
And it became one of my favorite things. I've read it. It's probably my most read comic of all time, just because I've had it for so long, and it was something you can bring with you in the car, and you have more than one comic, and it's beaten up. But the reason why it's so special to me is it was the first time that I had ever read a story with nothing missing in the middle. And it made me realize how the universe really connects when you read all the right issues in order.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that makes so much sense now. Even if it's silly, at least I got to see who actually killed Superman and who tried to stop him, and how big the battle was. And just I didn't see the panel design yet where they made it count down, so it starts the 7th issue. I think there's 7 panels in every page, and then the 6th issue there's 6. Then they go to 4, then they go to 2. Like, it was all part of the story. So
I don't
you get
think
to the
I
final
realized
issue,
that.
it's just splash pages, splash pages, splash pages. That's all it is.
Oh, no way.
And so it builds up to a somewhat of a crescendo or decrescendo. I'm not sure what direction that's. It's like,
let's go crescendo.
Yeah, it's going to this crescendo, right? I
assume so. I'm not a conductor, but I think it's crescendo.
Yeah. No, it was so epic as a kid to see this story, and then it continues with the follow-up. So it's more the death of Superman, and then the whole reign of the Superman became something that now I paid attention to. Where if I follow these little numbers on the book, I might be able to keep track of these episodes, if you will. And I remember by chance, I don't know why we were there, but we were in a little mall, me and my dad, where they had the Superman, I think it was issue not 75. I don't remember the number when he returns, but it had this special like foil cover. It was like Superman in the...
Was it not 75-ish? I just don't remember.
I think he died at issue 75. And it might have been somewhere in the 80s.
I will look it up while you're...
Yeah. And in that issue, it's the spoilers, Superman comes back from the dead, and you realize that the cyborg Superman, who seemed to be... I was starting to believe he was the heir apparent. Like, maybe that is how Superman has to come back if he's died. He's a half a machine now. It makes sense. It sucks, but it's like, that actually makes a little sense. You realize he's a villain, and he tells Superman in their final battle, like, this is me. Do you remember who I am now? Like, you started this. And I just so happened, out of all of the random issues that I had as a kid, I had the first appearance of Hank Henshaw, not really realizing anything of it, because it's a Fantastic Four,
like a
pastiche.
Yeah.
It's like a...
Was it intended that it would be that way? Do you know?
To make Hank Henshaw the cyborg?
Yeah, or was he only ever just supposed to be a throwaway?
It seemed like a throwaway in a lot of ways, because they do have a continuing story where like his consciousness goes into like a computer and it gets sent away. But I as a kid reading this for the first time, to connect the dots and to realize like this is where the stories exist. These stories all continue. Like those old comics that I have that I don't know the fill-ins, it does lead to this. This is the same Superman. Those aren't just random stories. I thought sometimes it was like a cartoon where you watched an episode and that's it. That was last adventure. No, I realized like, no, these stories all continue and they matter. And for me, that like it clicked the comic book language in my mind, and that thrill of pay attention. Because when they say this happened in issue number such and such, check it out. It might be fun. Like there's a point to all of this. And it just made the experience of reading comics now something so much bigger to me. And it starts with the Death of Superman trade.
Oh, that's cool. The thing is, it's funny as well, because like that's like a really key moment for me, I think, when you realize everything fits together. But I kind of did it differently, because I read one title, didn't I? I read like the reprint title, and then when you start buying single issues and you're going, oh, this is before this, and this happens before, and this happened over here, and that affects this, and that just really, that was the hook for me.
Yes,
that's the hook of the big universe stuff, and it's different to how it translates into the films. I think, even though you can see like cause and effect between one film and another, or this is picked up in the TV show, like, oh, it's picked up in the TV show. It's not the same as monthly comics.
No,
You know, that
no, it's
vibe
not.
of like, I mean, even if you go like, oh, there's a big explosion over there and everyone's being psychically attacked for some reason. Are you all right? You're not feeling well? Oh, yeah, I don't know what's going on. And if you pick up this other issue of X-Men, you go like, oh, it's because the Shadow King's being a knob over there. And that's, you know, and it's all interconnected, even if when it's subtle.
I've really realized when it's done well, how caught up you can become on a storyline. Meaning, those eyes, those tricky eyes. Lately I've been reading Road to War of Kings.
Yeah.
And then just before that I was reading Young Avengers.
Yes.
And then I think there was something in the middle that I read anyhow. In all of these stories, it's happening at the time or just around the time where the Secret Empire, not a Secret Empire, Secret Invasion.
Secret Invasion. Mm. Oh yeah.
And
of course,
all of these books are just, I'm like, every book is a Secret Invasion. Like I'm kind of but then you realize like, no, this affected the universe.
It did, yeah.
But they did it in a way that was so it just complemented each other. And the more I'm reading it, I'm like, you know what? I'm happy that I'm getting all of the pieces filled in, because I actually want to read Secret Invasion now, because this was clearly a game-changing thing in the entire Marvel universe. Not just the Avengers, not just this, the Inhumans, the Guardians, the everything.
Yeah.
I'm really having a fun time with it.
That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, it's fun when that happens. Excuse me. It's fun when that happens. And like without veering too heavily off.
Oh my goodness.
Are you okay?
My best friend and dog was crawling under the table and got her foot caught on the power source. Oh, no. She's good, but my computer almost took a spill. Sorry, everybody. Kobe, take a seat.
I thought something smashed.
Me too. She hit my water, and anyways, we're good.
Okay.
Dave.
Yes.
Take it away.
Okay. What are we doing? The next one?
Do the next one.
Oh, okay. This is my only Marvel choice, and it's an odd one, and it's probably not what you would have expected. Hang on, let me just. Yep. Probably not what anyone would expect. So basically, around the time of Young Avengers, of all things, when things started to really come together in the Marvel Universe again, and they've really started to bring all the books. You know, they're all impacting each other. What happens in Hulk is ejected into space, and some of that's in Fantastic Four, but the fallout of it is felt in Illuminati, and then that leads into Civil War. All this is going on, and even then in space, there's like Annihilation, and all that's going on, and it's multiple titles, and blah blah blah. Meanwhile, in another corner of what may or may not be the Marvel Universe, there was Next Wave.
I've heard a lot of good things about this.
Yeah. So, Next Wave is, I think they've kind of decided to set it as if it's the characters from the mainstream Marvel universe who kind of ventured into an alternate universe for a bit. I don't think of it that way. I think you can think whatever you like. Interpret these things however you want. It doesn't matter. But it's of all these characters they could have. So it's Warren Ellis. And Stuart Immonen, and I think it's one of the first times I really paid attention to Stuart Immonen. No, it's the second, because he did Incredible Hulk. But it's a completely different style. And it feels like one of the most visceral Saturday morning cartoons they would never allow on TV.
Right.
It's like, I remember, this might have been when Misha was pregnant. I think I was reading it to her at one point, and because it would help settle her. And she's going, this is the most like cynical thing I've ever heard. I just think it's fun, but I've got quite a dark sense of humor. But it's so it's Elsa Bloodstone, who most people don't know. She was I think she's only been in her own miniseries at this point, which no one really bought, but I did because I'm a huge nerd. Machine Man. Oh yeah, man! I love Machine Man. Boom Boom from X-Force. Stop destroying your room.
No kidding.
The former Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau, who's just going by Monica Rambeau at this point, and some dude called the Captain, and they're on a team called Next Wave, and they kind of realise they've been had by this guy who was supposed to be Nick Fury. Oh no, I've now forgotten his name. Oh, it's one of my favourite series, and I don't remember anyone's name. But they realise they're working for this. The people they think are the good guys they're working for aren't. And they're basically going around destroying these. They're not quite weapons of mass destruction. They're even bigger than that. And it's been so long since I've read it. It's bizarre weapons of mass destruction. But there's like Machine Man fights Fin Fang Foom in one issue. They get attacked by koalas. Machine Man's obsessed with Elsa Bloodstone's chest. It's just it's constant silliness. They've got mindless ones in it, but they skateboard and stuff. It's just constantly throwing weirdness at you, and it's just so much relentless fun. And it was one of those books, like the reason why I consider it like a life-changing book. For one, I couldn't shut up about it. It's only 12 issues. I wish they'd carried on, but people weren't buying it. They did a theme tune for this as if it was a Saturday morning cartoon, and it was in the MySpace days. Do you remember MySpace?
Yeah, I didn't engage with it, but I remember a lot of people having it for
I had a MySpace page.
Everybody did.
Yeah. But Warren Ellis had a MySpace page, and it linked through to the people that did the theme tune. I can't remember what they're called now. But yeah, it basically got some people to create a theme tune as if it was a TV program. So when people say that, what would you actually want them to see Marvel translate into a film right now from what's left? It would, with some hesitance, because I don't think they're translating them well anymore, it would be Next Wave, just because it is just a relentless kick in the face, while laughing repeatedly at you and insulting your mum. It's non-stop. It knows what it is, and it's just there's a point where it's double-page spreads of just insanity. They're fighting MODOK Elvises, like whatever.
I don't know why I haven't read this yet.
It's the thing is, it doesn't tie in with anything. It completely stands alone, and that's probably why people weren't picking it up. You know, they had Civil War across one issue, as if it was part of Civil War, but it went like not a Civil War tie-in. So it was just taking the piss. It seems
like something right up my alley.
It's good fun.
It seems like a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and I love a 12-issue. It takes place in the universe, but it's not going to be mired by, which sometimes it's good. Like I just finished saying, this is fun because it's all tying in and I'm seeing all the different corners. But in this case, it's like this will never be mired by when it was. Next Wave, Agents of Hate, Civil War, people love us.
Mark Miller, right. What's it? Eats goats, licks goats. It's just like it's just taking the piss the whole way through. It's very cynical and British. But it was one of those things as well that made me go, I want a bit more of this. As much as I'm loving the Civil War thing, I want more stuff that I can just read from start to finish, have a ton of fun doing it, and then just say to everyone, please read this because it's amazing, and no one will because no one reads comics that I know. But, that was one of those moments. It was just, that was the life-changing bit of it, was like, I need other stuff now. I need to branch out. And it got me picking up plenty of other books at that time. I think I was only reading Marvel again at that point, so it was kind of post my Vertigo dip, and then I had to branch out again because I'm just going like, this is awesome, and I love Civil War, and I love the way they're tying the Marvel Universe together. It's brilliant, but I also want just a bit of an escape that's not making me go, so this ties to this and this ties to this, and that's the order it goes in.
I was saying to Adam Chapman yesterday, shout out to Adam Chapman on our Book of the Month Club, I said this Kang reading order that Dave has come up with, it's mad. Like he's a madman. I don't know how he did it. It's so concise and it seems very accurate because there's things that have been published in 2023 that are at like closer to the beginning of the Kang story.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's dedication to this list. Everyone check it out. Omniverse Comics.guide, Kang reading order. Wow.
Thank you. Wow.
I don't know if there's been, I don't even think Marvel
don't like that. Really care about doing that. There are bits that I have, and I need to credit on this, but there's the Marvel Chronology who are really good. They do a fair chunk of some of what I'm trying to do sometimes. I don't always agree with what they've done, but they're probably, they're quite a good source. So that's the thing. I mean, you start dipping in and you check out all the resources and you go onto the Marvel app. There are bits that will steer you, but the time it takes, especially when it's time travel related, and some of those later stories, you're like, yeah, you're right. I don't necessarily know where they fit until I start really delving into it. It's tricky.
But that's why it's so tricky, because it's a time travel character, and what would still count? What's been, what's the word do they call it? Retconned.
Oh yeah.
Like what sticks, what wasn't a real Kangs. That happens when they
Yeah.
want to just clean it up and put something away.
Well, there's one story
So-
that happens 4 times technically because it's 4 of his different personas in the same room.
Yeah, it's so confusing, but you did a really cool job at putting that list together. Well done.
Thank you. Cheers, dude. Do you wanna do yours? Cheers.
Yes. Okay. This room became a real quick mess. My plant fell. My dog almost took my computer out. I'm befuddled. Okay.
You're all good. You got it.
I'm going to go back to the DC universe before I veer off, just
Okay.
before I forget. It's another Superman-related thing.
Okay.
I don't know if you have this.
I can't
Superheroes.
see. Oh my god, is that what I think it is? The world's greatest
Yes.
superheroes, the Alex Ross thing. Sorry.
Yes. Paul
Spectacle.
Dini,
Yes.
Alex Ross.
I haven't read it.
Again, this I think also follows the chronological order by chance. So in my teenage years, I wasn't really buying any comic books because they just seemed too expensive to keep up with.
Yeah.
But I was buying a lot of music at the time. So if I had $20, I'd be buying a CD instead of a comic book. But there was a comic book shop at a mall not too far from my house that I would go into sometimes just to see what's going on, what's interesting, is there anything new? And I never knew what to get because everything had gone way past from when I read comics as a little kid, right?
Yeah.
The last things I bought were Electric Blue Superman.
Right.
Over. So I said, I want to get something. I want to get something today. And it wasn't this, but it was the Superman Peace on Earth issue.
Yes.
And it was oversized. It was very big. They were almost like
Was this say they were tabloid
size.
size?
it was tabloid size. It was very odd size for a comic book, but when I looked inside and saw the artwork, I just was like, oh my goodness. The first time you see Alex Ross, I think for a lot of people, it makes you go,
Yeah, you can't
Wow.
not react. It's
You
the
can't
last
not.
thing you expect from comics. Whether you see
Yeah.
it now or you give it to an adult who's not read comics in a while, and
And
they're
it-
like, "Here you go. Have you ever heard of this guy? What? You can do that?
yeah,
Yeah, you can do that.
exactly. And I feel he's an artist, and this was a book that if you just let anybody look at, they would say, wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
Wow. And what sold me it was a splash page like this.
Oh yeah, I literally only read this recently.
Can you see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. That's Superman carrying some food supply into Rio de Janeiro. And it's just such an iconic statue and place
Yeah.
and view. And to see Superman in that pseudo Christ pose, being the savior and not doing it to be a savior, but it's that thing of, I can bring people food. There's no reason why people should be hungry in the favelas in Brazil or in Africa that they can't get water. Like, I can do something about that. It wasn't him being dictatorial. It was just like, if they say they can't bring a boat there, I'll bring it there. Problem solved.
It's the question people ask. I think when you talk to some people, they go like, I couldn't read that stuff because like, why don't they do more when there's like wars and people are hungry? This is the story that basically addressed it.
It is.
Quite
and that's
cleverly.
Yes, exactly. So you got that. All of the book is like that. It's all this breathtaking, like, is this a real place? Like these seem like real people. And of course he has models that he bases these characters on. But then you got like expressions like this, like Superman seeing that he's made people have hope.
Uh-huh.
Right? There's a lot of that Christ-like sort of thing that they're doing here. But at my favorite moment in the book is when it hit home for me was this.
Oh yeah, I remember you mentioning this. You mentioned a few weeks ago, I think.
I'm not sure what it is about that shot, but it's the fact that he's sitting there in a Superman suit, half dressed like Clark, but with his glasses on, and there's nobody around.
No.
And I just love the fact that at the end of the day, he's Clark.
Yeah, he's a guy. He's some guy.
He's not this god. He's a guy who at the end of the day feels defeated like the rest of us because there's only so much even he could do. And he knows that this is a complicated position I'm in, because I could become power hungry and greedy if I'm so bent on stopping the people who deserve to be stopped. If I feel I'm the man to do it, I can quickly become them.
Yeah.
And it's a certain level of success and defeat in that picture. It's like he's still Superman, but at the end of the day, he's man. He's Clark Kent.
He's mortal in many ways.
Yeah. And I just love how that one panel of him sitting on his, I don't know if it was a lazy boy. It wasn't a lazy boy, but just on his love seat. At the end of the day, Superman still is like, I could use a drink. You know? And I think that sort of character exploration through picture, that's what makes this art form really special.
Paul Dini really allows Alex Ross to do that in this. Like, he knows what his strengths are, and he lets him play into them. Like, because that's the thing, he can express really well. It's not that he can just paint beautifully; he can really express all that emotion in his artwork. Mm-hmm. I read it myself recently, but I got the Absolute edition.
That's really nice. That's really nice.
Pretty.
Yeah, that's probably the size close
that it
to.
Was. That's what I was thinking. Like, was it
close to that? Yeah, it wasn't something. I have that copy, the single issue of it, I guess, or I don't know if it was considered an issue or a trade or what. But
I think that's when is that when it's a graphic novel? Like when it's
I guess you're right. Yeah. So I have it still, but because of its shape, I don't know where I've put it.
Oh no.
I know it's around here somewhere. But yeah, or maybe because I have the collected version, I may have gotten rid of it. But yeah, that book was something that I treasured having because it kept my love for comic books alive. When I wasn't collecting them, I'm like, I still love this thing. I still love Superman.
Yeah.
That's cool. What kept me going. All right.
That's cool.
Take it away.
Thanks, dude. My number 3 is another Vertigo book. So when I was saying that Next Wave pushed me into other directions, it did. So that's when I started picking up things like Invincible that was standalone, and dipping back into Vertigo. But the Vertigo series I'm actually going to talk about is actually one that I think had finished by the time I read it again. So I tried to read it before and it didn't register with me. But I kind of hit a point in my life where I needed something else. It was a confusing, kind of messy time for me, as everyone kind of goes through one of those at some point in their lives. And this was mine. So my confusing, messing time was helped greatly by one of the most confusing and messy comics that's ever existed, which is The Invisibles. It's basically, to some degree, it's not this simple, but every conspiracy theory is true in The Invisibles. It all ties together. It's all part of some greater whole, greater conspiracy, and it's all building up to the millennium. Basically, because something big is going to happen in the millennium, or there's a specific date that's in the I Ching where something is going to happen. Was it the millennium? I think it's a random date, like something 2003. Again, I used to know this stuff off the top of my head, and now that I'm talking about it, I can't remember all the finer detail. But it's been a while. Time, yeah, way past time. I mentioned before as well that there's a guide to The Invisibles, and I read it the third time, I think, with the guide, and was just like, my mind was blown even further. But the first time I read it, it's like, I'm not sure this is for me. But yeah, the second time, it's like, I don't know. I needed answers, man. I needed answers. I needed kind of sense of direction. And this really experiments with the medium of comics as a whole. Experiments with storytelling. Experimented with one of the oddest examples of someone boosting their sales I think I've ever heard, which was when the sales were flagging, he basically asked everyone who was reading to collectively please themselves at a certain point at a certain time to magically boost sales.
And it worked.
Through sex magic. I mean, it sold better. Was it the magic?
That's so weird.
Yeah.
Oh, Grant Morrison. I've been tempted to take a crack at it, but I feel like there's some Grant Morrison that is just too heady for me. And I like a good meta physical type of story. I didn't want to say I like a good heady book. I knew your eyes would spin. No, but I do like those complex stories. And this was, again, a shout out to my conversation from Book of the Month Club. There's complex and there's complicated. And I feel sometimes Grant Morrison can be complicated for me.
Yeah.
And I'll miss the nuance of it all.
It's very
but I
easy.
want to give it a try, just the challenge.
I mean, the thing
Say
is,
that again?
the first book is probably the hardest. But by the time it gets to book 2, it's like, okay, then he goes for a completely different style. And he makes it feel more like it's American and cinematic. So the first one is very much inspired by British comics. But I wasn't that keen on it. I didn't really read British comics. I didn't like them. And then when it gets a bit more blockbustery, it becomes a little more familiar because actually he took issue with DC because he felt that The Matrix stole his ideas from The Invisibles, basically.
Which is a Warner Brothers film, right?
Yeah. Of course, Warner Brothers own DC, who own Vertigo. So, yeah. It was a really...
That's an interesting take.
Yeah. I think he eventually realised he was wrong to be pissy about it because a lot of the ideas he's got in here are influenced by like Philip K. Dick and all sorts of other people. It's like, well, everything's influenced by something, so I need to shut up. But yeah, I mean, that's part of what makes him as well an interesting character. But he felt as well that he wanted to be the main character, King Mob. So he shaved his head and decided to be more like him. And then he put him through this really horrific period in the story, and it started to impact his real life. But he did. There's a lot of magic stuff, and it advises how you can kind of practice magic. And it kind of steered me into like an experimental period where I thought like I'm gonna look into this, but things got weird. I'm not gonna go into the ins and outs of that, but it really opened.
When we do the invisible reading order, I want to hear those stories.
Oh God, I don't know if I'd share them, but basically, yeah, it was interesting. It literally affected the real, like his whole obsession with 23s as well, all this stuff, and it started to kind of bleed into my obsessions at the time. It was a very strange period, and it was weird to have like something like the Invisibles to guide you through because it's nuts. The whole thing is nuts. I didn't think like there were elder gods trying to manipulate the universe or anything, but yeah, it was an interesting period of time, and it was such an odd book to have as your Bible. But massive influence on my life. So
I think that's a lot of times that's what happens. It enters the space not because you're looking for it there. Like, I don't think you started reading it because like this is where I'll find my answer to my personal life. It just starts to. I think someone, I forgot where I heard it, but people were, I think it was two comedians talking, where there's a lot of, at some point in time, premises start to be shared. Mm-hmm. And it's just because the ideas generating, everybody's looking for an idea or for inspiration at the same time. And what might be coming through is a lot of people coming up with similar premises that everyone might seem like, oh, you copied him. But it's all just creating at the same time. Like, it's just a wave that's coming through. And I think with something like what you went through with Invisibles and with The Matrix, it's like this, sometimes that happens. In life. I think my similar to you, I had a similar experience.
Is that your next choice?
My next pick, not as cool as yours, like how you had cool. It was happening for you. This was more of a panel. I mean, it made you interested in his creative, in like the way he was creating this book. You wanted to crack that code a little bit more, right?
Yeah, completely. I got a little obsessed with
it. Pretty impactful.
Do you want to go for your number 3?
Okay. That's the ad break. I'll go to my number 3. I've mentioned this book a number of times, and we talked about it on our incoming recently. It's a new compendium from Image, and it is Black Science.
Oh.
This is trade number 3.
Oh, you got the trade.
I enjoyed this series. I have the trades. Yeah, I do want to get the compendium and read it all like as one story. But as it was coming out, I was buying it in trade upon release, keeping up to speed with it. I I really liked the character of Grant McKay in the sense that he was a bit of a tortured soul, trying to find himself, really trying to make peace with his mistakes, do right by his wife, his children, his friends, but all in the meanwhile taking them on an adventure that was completely messed up. But it's again, Rick Remender's books, and this is Rick Remender and Matteo Scalera, their Image title, Black Science. And the premise of it is it's a dimension hopping team that what they've used is this. They've designed this machine called the Onion, and I guess the metaphorical way, as you peel the onion back, there's all these different layers that kind of you get to know about yourself and your friends and everybody's intentions. But the thing that spoke to me in this issue, I forgot what issue it was. Okay, issue 15 in trade number 3. Grant is talking to one of his friends who he wants to have join him on his expedition of making this dimension hopping machine that if it works properly, the intent is to go to each dimension, find what they've discovered, bring it back home, and heal and cure cancer. Cure these things that's his intention. Here's how we can solve these problems. They might be somewhere else where versions of us have solved it there. But he's got to cut corners, right? So he says do you mind if I read this just to give it context? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. He's trying to convince his friend to leave university and just go on this expedition. Basically, like, let's do our own black science. He goes, I'm getting good education at Berkeley, Dr. McKay. And he says, I'm not a doctor, Sean. But his friend that he's trying to convince thinks he's a doctor because of his, I guess, reputation. Yeah. He goes, and I'd refuse, Grant McKay says this, I'd refuse the title even if I'd finished school. Titles are just constructs to help us label one another too quickly, assess what someone is worth without thinking too much. And I love that little dialogue because I said, yes, it is. That's exactly what a lot of and there's times where a title of a person in an expertise position is important. You don't want someone who's not a real doctor. But in this case, it spoke to me in a personal way, in my personal life.
Yeah.
And he says at the end, seeking validation from institutions only leads to work in more institutions. Who has time for that? Because how long do you think it'll take to pay back those student loans? I dug up your financial situation. And so he basically breaks down to him being obsessed with these titles and these positions for people to validate you and for you to, it's cheat codes for us to not ever get to know each other. And I find that rings true today. People would be like, well, but it's true because we now put specific labels on our profiles. We got to let people know, here's my label. And it is like a signal to say, now you know what I think about everything in the world without having to get to know me. And I think we also look at each other in those ways to the point where, well, no point in talking to them because they've already, but it's not a good thing to be. It's so important to say, I don't care what his title is. He might be a doctor, but he could be, as you say, a knob. Right?
I think there are plain
everything he say might be bollocks. Right? And sometimes it's the people who have no designation or title that can become the most trustworthy person you meet, but it requires you to take the time to get to know somebody.
Do you know what that reminds
so that
me of?
page
Sorry,
there, the whole. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
When I was a kid, they used to do this thing on game shows where they'd say, like, what's your name and where'd you come from, or often what do you do? And that would be like, they're the things that define you. And I always found that weird as a kid, you know, like what your job is and where in the country you're from, you know? It's weird. And it's strange to, like, you're right, because it's funny because we do have people that they're writing their profiles. This is your profile. You've got this many characters, sum up who and what you are in your own words, go. It's strange. And like, there's a skit that, Frankie Boyle does where he refers to some people that put tea drinker in there. Like, wow. Tea drinker. Like, that's the best thing you could think to say about yourself. You know?
Coffee connoisseur.
Yeah. Coffee connoisseur, vegan, Street Fighter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's
odd.
the thing,
I find
right?
it weird. I refuse to do it.
Me too. I don't want to. When they say, "What? Put this, put that." No. Here's my name. This is what I do. This is what you'll see on the page. It's I'm a podcast guy. Comic books, pop culture. That's enough.
Yeah.
Right. If you want to know who I am, you'd have to be my friend or listen to the show.
Yeah.
But I've always been in circles in life where a lot of times people get introduced to you and then they'll give and this is their title. This is what they do. And a lot of times you would get, I don't say judged, but, oh, you're not that thing. You're not in the circles that I would be in, right?
Yeah.
Just in life. And it was these little habits. It's just like, I really don't give a shit what he does and this, that, or the other, what his position is. Because I've talked to him for 10 minutes and he seems like a knob.
A knob.
Right?
Yeah.
Knob cheese. But so this just spoke to me in a way where it's like, it's so important to really know who you are.
Yeah.
And to get to know other people around you and not base it upon any sort of title or vocation.
Yeah.
Or social status. Get to know a person, because you might miss out on something really, really special if you're just looking for status.
Yeah. That's cool.
And it helped me just make sense of something.
Yeah.
So
it's
shout
good.
out to Black Science.
It's like a validation of your thinking, essentially.
A little bit, yeah. And I didn't expect it to come from there. That's what I liked about it. I'm like, wow, this cut scene. It's not. It was like a flashback moment. And I said that was really nice to see how this came together and almost like what convinced the guy. So it's not necessarily good that he didn't go for his doctorate. I'm not saying that, but it also was an interesting dialogue between two trusted friends, right? They become best friends ultimately. That's my number 3.
Nice. It's making me want to jump in it as well, because I've had them for a while. The books, but I need to read it. But you're right. It is coming out as compendium as well this year. Also, they're releasing Low as a compendium, which I mean I didn't like, but I know a lot of people did like it. So it seems they're going to compendium up a lot of Rick Remender's stuff. Remender.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There was that moment in time where he was just everywhere. Deadly Class, Black Science, Low. It was just book after book that he was making. He had 7 to Eternally. All was in the same.
What was the Ghost one? Tokyo Ghost.
Yeah, there's a lot that I haven't read because simultaneously he was working at Marvel doing Cap and Uncanny Avengers, Uncanny X-Force. Yeah, so he had this creative moment where a lot of stuff was just coming out every week. There was a Rick Remender book.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Shall we
number 4?
Do number 4s. Okay, so my autobiographical thing. I'll try not to harp on too much about it, but basically, when I stopped reading Marvel, I was trying to find stuff that kind of resonate with me in some way. I did miss that big universe feel, and obviously the most obvious place to jump would be the DC universe, but there's also smaller universes like Valiant and all that kind of stuff. But I think the thing I really wanted again was that kind of contained story. I wanted something that was kind of start to finish, something I could really, really get into and get into the characters and feel that there was a suitable ending that I was happy with. And I found it, but it's one of those books that doesn't get a huge amount of love. This could be a hidden gems book easily, but again, it became a little bit of an obsession. I was literally going and saying to people, you need to read this book. It's called Revival.
Nice. I gotta read this.
It's really good. It's 8 trade paperbacks from Image Comics or 4 hardcovers. I think the hardcovers are quite hard to track down at this point in time. But yeah, I did touch on it recently. It's about a small, I think it's Alaskan town, where the recently deceased, return to life, but not as zombies, they've returned to life. And some of them just died of natural causes. Some of them, it seems, died under mysterious circumstances. And and that comes with lots of different mysteries and stories to tell and revelations and all these little hooks, these little reveals. And it's brilliant. And it keeps rewarding you the whole way through. I think when I read this book 1, which is kind of trade paperbacks 1 and 2, I literally just got on the phone onto my app and ordered book 2 straight away. I need this to arrive tomorrow, please. I need it.
That's good. That's a good experience.
Yeah. So it was exactly what I needed. And I did end up kind of veering into the superhero universe thing. Obviously, we're covering a lot of DC stuff on the Omniverse Comics Guide, but this made me go I want to find those bigger stories, like those epic stories that are still epic but self-contained. And it really just resonated. I think I read it twice. As soon as I finished, I read it again. Really? I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. And it's by Tim Seeley, who isn't necessarily that well known, but I think he should be better known. He's done some really good stuff. He used to be an artist. Well, he is an artist as well. But I think initially
he did Grayson with Tom King. And
yes,
then I think he
did.
took over Nightwing in the Rebirth era.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
He's also done Money Shot, which is about people making porn in space. He's done Hack Slash, which is a reference to a lot of the horror films. I think it's basically a character hunting down the horror creatures, going from place to place in America. Done some very random things. Sorry, I've got a really annoying cough tonight.
Problem.
But yeah, and Mike Norton's art is a little close to Paul Pelletier. It's veering into that territory. It's not quite as detailed, but there are elements in there where I go, God, he really reminds me of Paul Pelletier here and there. So it's great art. It's a perfect pairing. It's a creative team, and it was exactly what I needed. I needed something to get into that would stop me just going, oh, I'll just go back to Marvel. It was like a bad breakup where you go, maybe we should just get back together. And
it's not that bad. I can look past your faults.
Yeah, I know you treat me horrifically, but maybe it's not that bad.
I can't get over Secret Wars.
Yeah,
that Jonathan guy ruined everything between us.
He came between us, and that was it. We're over. I needed to meet someone else, and I met Revival. So it's a great book. If you want something that does stand out, it's a bit different. It's got a supernatural vibe. It's got a detective vibe as well. Pick this up because it's seriously good. It doesn't get enough credit.
You gotta check that out. I had I think the first and second hardcover of Revival in my hands at a store, but I knew I wasn't going to be able to get my hands on the third.
Yeah, and
I was asking you that day. I'm like, what do I do? Do I go with the Black Hammer hardcovers, or do I go with the Revival? And getting my hands on the third copy of the hardcover Revival was not going to happen. So I was going to be incomplete.
You'd have to be lucky, and it can happen. But
that was the thing. It could happen, but you're really putting your faith in happenstance and hoping that it pops up somewhere randomly.
Yeah.
For a decent price, right? So I do want to read it. I think they'll probably release that in a compendium. It seems to be the trend now with Image where it seems to be the trend now with Image where they, once you get it in the hardcovers and they complete the series in the hardcovers, eventually they'll reprint it in a bigger collected format. So here's hoping. I want to read it.
It's so good.
You don't give 5 stars to many things.
No.
And you're usually on point with what you're willing to give the 5 stars to. I like that. I respect.
Oh, cool.
I respect where the criticism is like, no, there's a standard, and if I give it, it's got to be almost like undeniable.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cheers, dude.
Number 4 for me. All right. I actually did mine in order autobiographically as well.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yes.
You inspiration, you.
It's the way to do it.
One of my the alternate pick. I'm putting in my alternates. I'm telling you now because I only have it digitally, so I want to be able to. For those who are only listening, you can't see the books we're showing, but that could be encouragement for you to tune into the YouTube channel. But my third pick, it's another series.
Plug.
March. By Andrew Iden.
Oh my God, that's such a good choice.
Nate Powell.
Such a good choice.
Written by, I guess it's scripted by Andrew Aiden, but it's really the biography of John Lewis. He wrote it.
Not the guy who owned the shops in England. Just we do have John Lewis over here. I don't know if you have them anywhere else, but it's a series of shops.
Pretty common name.
Yeah, it's the Senator John Lewis, Congressman.
Yeah, I'm gonna read the back of it, just so people, if they've never heard of March, or maybe they have, or it's worthy to shout out for sure. This is a quote from Bill Clinton, actually, on the back of the book.
Oh,
that's what. Okay. Congressman John.
I did not have sexual relations inside Monica Lewinsky.
Okay.
Sorry.
Inside cover. I'm not going to quote Clinton because that could go into all.
No, do it. I'm sorry.
No, the actual thing is in the inside sleeve. I was reading I wasn't reading what I thought I was reading anyhow. Okay, so March is a vivid first-hand account of John Lewis' lifelong struggle for civil and human rights, meditating in the modern age on the distance traveled since the days of Jim Crow and segregation. Rooted in Lewis' personal story, it also reflects on the highs and lows of the broader civil rights movement. So the whole story of this part of John Lewis's life is in March. It continues in a book called Run, which is like a sequel. I haven't read yet.
No, neither have I.
But I bought this for my wife because she's a real fan of civil rights history, especially in the 60s and whatnot. And the artwork is just the right casting.
It's completely the right feel. Yeah.
It's the completely right feel. I'm going to just show a couple panels here. Nate Powell. It's one of the best civil rights, I think, documentations I've enjoyed. I've watched a lot of movies. My wife has read me excerpts from books and things like that, but it's very detailed, it's very accurate. It's firsthand experience. It's so heartwarming. It's so sad at times.
It's gut-wrenching at times. Like I was reading it in bed, just like sobbing at some moments, just because it's just shocking. It's shocking, but I think the way sometimes things are made into films, it can sanitize it a bit, or it's the way they play into the musical because it's the actor, and it's not the same as reading it in this form. So, yeah, I think like it's really impactful.
Yeah, it's a great collection. Highly recommend it to anybody. And you don't got to be a comic book fan to enjoy this.
No.
This is and it'll help you see like the magic of the comic book medium, what it could actually do.
Yeah.
When you want to tell any kind of story. The other reason why this is a very special book for me is it inspired me and my wife to go to Mocha Fest. It happened that Mocha Fest, which is like a indie comic con, if you will, was going to be taking place in New York City while we were there. I've told you this story before.
Yeah.
And we were able to meet the creators of the book there, and I got to interview them, like real guerrilla style interviewing, walking around with them on the con floor, trying to get some footage. It was a really cool experience.
Was that your first trip into a con like that?
In a con like that, yeah. I've always gone to like those bigger shows where the celebrities and things like that. And there were celebrities here. Like this is the one I said Mike Mignola was there.
Oh, yes, of course it was. Yeah.
Yeah. John Leguizamo was there promoting his book. He's a big comic book fan. And I was there to meet the guys from March. Like I had so many missed opportunities I wasn't thinking about it because this book was so much in the forefront of my enjoyment. I think I had just finished reading it for a second time before I got there. So it was a fun experience. It was a cool excuse to go to a show while you were in New York, getting to interview them in person. It was different. So that whole experience, the book will always kind of hold a soft spot in my heart for the content, but also the story that goes along with the podcast of it all. That episode can be found in the Cave of Solitude archives. Just type in March and you'll find something there. But yeah, great book.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it. And I think it's appropriate for all ages. I don't think there's age limit.
Was it the idea that it was written so that it would be accessible for all ages and also in comic form because he read comics as a kid? John Lewis did. Was that right?
It's somewhat right. So Andrew Aiden was, I think, one of his political aides when he was congressman. Um, and they were discussing how they would want to tell his story, because for people who don't know who John Lewis is, he was marching right beside Martin Luther King when they went to Selma, and he was the speaker just before Martin Luther King gave the "I Have a Dream" speech. Like, he's right there. This is a key figure, to give you firsthand footage and all the different branches that came out of their original group and where it went and things like that. But Andrew Iden in the group was saying, why don't we tell your story in a comic book, like a graphic novel, because he was a comic book fan. And they all laughed at him, of course, right? Comic books, come on, we could get a film. And then John Lewis said, wait. I learned about Martin Luther King through a comic book. Because he wasn't a reader, but he says, don't make fun of him, because the only reason I got involved with the civil rights movement was because of a comic book. So let's do it like that, and we could put it in schools and whatnot. And I'm like, that's cool. That's really cool. I'm happy he did it, and it's a remarkable set. I think you gave it 5 stars.
I did. I got the box set. You can get, it's the same 3 books, but it's in a box.
I like how you said in a box. What's in the box? What is it?
I'm not Brad Pitt. Just go, there's 3 books in them.
Are we on your number 5?
Yes. We're on my number 5. That was a lovely choice, though, man. That's such a good choice. That book is, that series, whole thing is fantastic. My number 5, again, I've mentioned this recently, so I won't go massively into a huge amount of depth. I haven't finished it, and the reason I haven't finished it is because book 3, in the format that I own it in, which is 3 books in total. So this is the Kaiju Max Deluxe Edition. It's bigger than an Absolute. These are big.
That's not Dark Horse.
No, this is Oni.
Oni, that's right.
So these are 3 of my adventures in finding stuff that isn't Marvel anymore. Way back, I did try this series out, but it's odd looking. So it looks like a kid's comic. It's got that vibe to it where it feels like you're reading a kid's book, but it's actually about kaiju on a prison island, and the wardens are basically, what do they call them? Like Super Sentai, the big robots. So it's like little humans in giant robot costumes basically acting as wardens on this island. And all the different groups of kaiju kind of go into their gangs when they're on there. And, you have to, some of them are trying to figure out which gang they belong in. And they might be like demonic kaiju, or they might be robot kaiju, or lizard-like ones. The thing about this book is that it's, because of the style, because of the way it looks and the way it's told, it catches you off guard. So when something major happens, and it's like, there's one moment in this that's quite shocking. It's so much more shocking and so much more impactful because you're not expecting it from a book that looks almost as cute as this. That's
what's thrown me off of that book, because I've heard numerous places, Kaiju Max. You got amazing Kaiju Max, and it's Xander Cannon.
Xander Cannon.
I know the name of the guy. I know I've heard it so many times, and it's thrown me off. That's cool. It's thrown me off because I'm like, this seems like a childish book. Like, I don't know if I know what I'm getting myself into. Because if it was, let's say, Daniel Warren Johnson art doing that story, I'd be all over it, just because it's like the monster and it's would be the thick inks and very like, he does the monsters so well.
Yeah.
Whereas this is almost friendly.
It feels friendly, and that's why it catches you off guard. But there's one issue that's borders on being a musical as well. So like, it's whatever you think you're going to get, you don't, and then you suddenly do find yourself getting really attached to some of the characters. And again, it's really emotional. And you're thinking, how are you hitting me there when we're talking about a kind of a giant demonic, or a small but relatively to a human giant demonic baby goat? It's like, how does it work? But it does, and that's the thing with it. It's like, this is what comics can do. This is what they can do that you don't expect, and you wouldn't necessarily get it anywhere else. I can't imagine this being made into, this would have to be an animated series or an animated film. It wouldn't, I don't think it would work necessarily. It works in comics, and it just made me just kind of go like this is, anything can happen. Any kind of book can work. It's basically Godzilla mashed up with the Oz. Like, how does that make sense? But it does. I'm desperately looking forward to the end. So it's seasons. He calls them seasons rather than series. It's seasons 5 and 6. They're out. You can get them in trade paperback, but they're being collected in deluxe format, volume 3, later, right at the very end of the year. And I'm looking forward to nothing more than this.
That's exciting.
It's so good. And what's beautiful as well about this, and I will just mention this briefly, I don't know if he does this in the trades as well, but as you go through, he's got notes at the bottom, and you can ignore them. They're little tiny notes, but they tell you what all the references are. So I like that. What kaiju films he's been inspired by, and what other influences he's been inspired by.
That's
so you
nice.
can read it once and just ignore those and just love it for what it is, and then read it again and read the notes and go like, no way, and you've got a whole different take on it. So it's like the director's cut feel through the book. And like I said, it's got teeth on the pages. Like, come on, sold. It's fantastic. It bites. I love it. It literally has changed my life. I opened up the mindset to basically going, whatever that looks like, put it to one side. If this is good, give it a shot. Give it a shot. It might not be what you expect. Just try it out. It's something different. You love different stuff. Don't be so closed-minded. Shut up, Dave. So I'm going to shut up and let you do your number 5.
All the things you've picked, though, are all books that I'm very interested in giving a shot to. Invisibles, Kaiju Max, Revival. I'm missing something. I read Preacher, but you got some good picks there. And I'm interested to see why they spoke to you so much. That's part of the thing I like about conversations like this, because people are like, wow, how come you didn't read that so you could talk about it with them? I'm like, that's the point of talking. It's like, I don't know everything. I want to see something new.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
I had a guy at work said that to me. He found my podcast by accident, Omniverse. I put it on his phone to subscribe, and then he thought it was I guess like an actual science podcast, and he hears my voice talking to Fred Kennedy, and then he comes into the room later. And I didn't realize he listened to so much of it. He goes, "You should have watched those Star Wars shows so you could have talked to him about it." And I'm like, "You expect me to know what everybody likes?" So it makes me excited to check. I want to get all these books you mentioned, but it's that will it be available, or will one volume now be $600?
I mean, for the most part, if I know not everyone wants the digital option, but if you desperately want to read any of the stuff we're talking about between the two of us, the digital options are there. If that's what if you desperately want to read them, or you can't afford the books, or they're hard to get hold of, that is an option. Often as well, like with these ones, they're real collector's item editions, but you can get this in 6 trade paperbacks. So, and I'm fairly sure they're all available, but it's the kind of thing I think Oni would make available. I'm not 100%, but I mean, have a look. They're much more accessible. It's probably not as daunting as buying a deluxe and going, God, I hope I like this. And then the pressure's on. Just get a trade, see how you feel. Just sit back, relax, have a cup of whatever your tipple is, and go for it. Give it a try. Keep an open mind.
Nice. Good picks. My final pick. Gonna shout out friend of the show, a good pal of mine, local creator. But I love this book, and more for the fact that I can recommend it to everybody, is Better Place.
Is that Sean? No.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's Dwayne Murray and Sean Daly's book.
Sean Daly, yeah.
It is from Top Shelf. Better Place is what it's called. It's so sweet. It is so charming. It is a lot of heart to it. But it's something you could read with your kids before going to bed, or you could read yourself, and it'll still have that. It's like that Pixar feeling where there is something for the parents and for the little ones, and it's like, oh, I'm happy that this exists so we can know how to deal with the subject when it comes. I don't know if you know this book well.
I remember you talking about it once. So I've got an idea. It's on my list. I do have it on the list to actually pick it up, but haven't yet.
Yeah, and it's one of those books where I'm just like, it's just good. It's just one of those things where it's the right illustrator with the right writer. Mm-hmm. But it's a story about a little boy and his grandfather who have these they dress up and they have these superhero adventures and they get lost in their imagination, and they have names. They're like sidekicks, right? One's like the Batman, one's the Robin, but they're more of like the cosmic variety. I forgot what the names are. Let me see. Man. Okay, let me read the synopsis for you, because I thought this was just
Bill Clinton, is it?
It's not Bill Clinton this time. No, it's Hillary. Dylan just moved to a new house with no friends and a mother who doesn't have time for him. Luckily, though, he has his granddad. Together they are Red Rocket and Kid Cosmo, who save the universe every day with the power of imagination. But one day, Dylan learns that his granddad is suddenly gone to a better place. Now, Kid Cosmo will have to save the day all by himself. It's really neat. It deals with that difficult subject that we all have to broach at one point in time, and it does it delicately, but also seeing a child have to realize, like, oh, where's my grandfather? Like, I'm caught. And he's, not to spoil it, but they have their little signals, or their little walkie-talkies where they communicate with each other, and it's him speaking into the void, and nothing's necessarily coming back now. How does his imagination, where does it take him of where his grandfather went? And there's even a moment where the little boy talks to a clergy member, and you always think, nowadays there's so much like, oh, the priest talking to a little boy. No, this is so beautiful how it's done, and very, like, yeah, it's got some guest artwork in it by Matt Kint, and I think Jeff Lemire, who Sean Daly was those were his inspirations as artists. Right. So they, for them to do some covers or some cut scenes, was a big deal for him. But it's a great book. I highly recommend, just like March, for everybody to get it, to read it with your kids. Just have it in your collection if you're a comic book fan, because it's beautiful. It's really well done.
It gets really good ratings as well. Like I read some of the reviews afterwards that people have dropped on various things, and it's highly praised.
Yeah, because what's brilliant about it is the easy it is to get into it and to follow the story, even though it cuts to scenes of imagination that make you go, wait a second, it's his little boy, like, this is what they imagine. That shopping cart becomes a rocket ship. And we all remember that time where we take inanimate objects and suddenly make, the laundry bin become this spaceship, if you will. Like, and it's so real to you when you're little. And if you got a really great grandfather who's in on it with you on the joke, like, wow, that's great. But I don't know, I can see this becoming an animated feature of some kind. It's worth it. It's really, really good. Shout out to Sean Daly. Cool. I always want to big up this book. It's deserving. Not just because he's my pal.
It sounds like it.
It's really deserving. Yeah, it really is. I was shocked. Like, I'm always going to support what he does, but it was one of those things where it's like, dude, you made something really special. Like, this is going to stand the test of time. It's good. Yeah.
Gotta give it a go.
Shout out to Sean Daly. And to Dwayne Murray. To both of them.
Nice.
They're both deserving of the praise for that book.
Cool.
There you go. There's our life-changing comics. Was my list not as lame as I sold it to be? I think
you made out it was going to be like, I didn't know what to expect. But no, it's cool. And that's the thing, like, it is a very personal thing, isn't it? And the reasons why you like different things can be completely different. And I mean, I like having questions that we can interpret our own ways as well, because then we can kind of surprise each other with some of the answers.
Yeah. No, that was fun. Thank you for the idea, Dave.
Oh, no worries.
Well done.
Thank you.
Everybody, don't forget to rate and review us on your favorite podcast app, however you use it. Spotify, Apple. Rate, review the show. Tell us you like it. Tell us you don't like it. Give us recommendations.
Don't tell us that.
It's all helpful. And of course, number one place, omniversecomics.guide. That website's getting nicer and nicer and nicer. I'm saying it as a fan, even though I'm involved in it. Sometimes I go on and I'm like, this is the website I've been waiting for. It's really good, guys. Stick with us, and it'll get better.
Yeah.
Bye-bye for now, everyone. Take care.
See you all later. Thanks a lot. See you next week.